Hello and welcome to Circles and Spaces. It's so good to be back, guys. My name is Azande and I'm joined by Dan. And also, guys, we have an amazing producer. His name's Jordan Dean.
Yes,
Jordan.
Hello, everyone.
That was Jordan. He helps us sound good, look good, everything. So we really appreciate Jordan. But if you are new to this podcast and you're unaware of how it works, what happens is we ask a bunch of youth leaders, youth pastors, anybody that cares about young people to basically send us in some voice notes about things that they want to hear us discuss. Dan, don't you have one at hand today?
Yes, I do. Yeah. So this came through from a guy called Jake Shepherd. He is an Aussie working with young people in Manila in the Philippines. And he said something I'd love to hear you discuss is Gen Z and the possibility of making a living through non-traditional ways. So he's talking about crypto, NFTs, YouTube, social media, influencing, esports. And I think we've gone on and we've had like loads of conversations about the metaverse.
Yes.
And we've been looking at the different generations. And so Gen Z is aged from 10 to 24s. And so we're passionate about Gen Z because they're teenagers. Now, the generation after that is Gen Alpha. So 10 and under is Gen Alpha. Knox, my boy.
And Nico as well.
And Nico, both of them. Gen Alpha. And we didn't coin the phrase Gen Alpha. I think it was an Aussie guy he actually did, because we've gone to the end of the English alphabet, X, Y, Z, and now we're starting at the Greek alphabet. And so I think it's good for us to look at some of this stuff, especially the metaverse, because the teenagers that are going to be growing up, when Generation Alpha become teenagers, I think metaverse will just be normal, potentially.
Every day.
Yeah.
I was going to say reality, but I don't even know if that's the right word for it.
Yeah, virtual reality. So we have got a really amazing guy today called Kevin Lee. He is in Shanghai, China, and he works with young people and has got such a passion with helping young people and I guess being aware of what's happening in the digital space. So let's have a conversation with him, and then afterwards we can chat about it.
So guys, we've got an amazing guest called Kevin, all the way from Shanghai, China. Kevin, could you please tell us who you are and what are you passionate about?
Sure, yeah. Thanks again for inviting me onto your podcast. It's just an honor to be included. I know you're meeting lots of interesting people, so I know our conversations today will be a lot of fun, and I've been looking forward to it. My name's Kevin. I'm born and raised in Canada, in Toronto, but I've been in Shanghai and China for the last 17 years. Really called here by God. I wasn't planning to come, but God just told me I had to. And so I've been here doing lots of different things. And through that journey with him, he's really revealed to me, what my focus is and what my calling is. And that calling is certainly about the next generation. And that has formed over many, many years. And today what I do is I lead a company called China Youthology. We are one of the foremost research houses here in China, focused on the next generation here. China's a really fast and dynamic place, and you can imagine how a whole new generation is dealing with so much change, with so much opportunity in front of them. And so it's been an amazing ride to be among them and to be with them and to converse with them and know them as they have, continued to form and explore their identity and really start to dream and construct what their life is going to be, which of course gives us a viewpoint of what China is going to be. And that gives us a viewpoint to where the world's headed. And so that really in a nutshell is kind of what God has called me to be at this horizon, to see a little bit farther out here, and to really share what I see from this side to other people who are working, in the marketplace as well as in the kingdom. If I were to summarize from a ministry perspective, even though this is professional and I'm doing this, in the market, but from a ministry perspective, the best way to summarize it is, how God calls us to, reap the harvest, and God calls us to sow the seeds. But many years ago, God also revealed to me that before we sow the seeds, we have to till the soil. And that's very much what I've been about and been doing here in China, which is tilling the soil for the next generation so that their hearts are ready for the word to come. Because again, China's been going through so much. And so the work has had to be done in this way. And so it's been a long journey so far. I don't know how much longer it's going to be, but it's been glorious, and it's been glorifying to him all throughout.
So encouraging just to hear about that. So the name of the organization, do you say Youthology?
Yeah, China Youthology, but we just call ourselves Youthology.
So we're going to jump into our topic for today, which is all around, I guess, the digital revolution. And the digital revolution has totally changed the way that we do life. And I think it'd be good just to pause and take a moment just to think, how has this impacted young people? So, you know, from your point of view, how would you say that this has impacted young people? And feel free to speak from, you know, a perspective of young people in China, or if you want to give like a worldview, that's totally cool.
Yeah, for sure. If I went into too specific on China, we'd be here for a very long time. But I think it's really important to kind of draw those broad strokes, those broad commonalities, and what they do. Technology has certainly hit us all in a big tidal wave storm, obviously, and I think everyone listening to this, especially if we're talking about youth leaders and et cetera. I mean, we're talking to probably millennials and younger. I mean, if you're not a millennial and you're listening, that's great. I love you. And, you're doing an amazing job. But most likely we're talking about millennials and younger. And so probably most of us already consider ourselves digital natives, but it is still interesting to see a next generation truly born in a different world of digital. All of us are kind of digital natives, but this next generation is born not just digital, but like highly social digital, and then highly like e-com digital, and then highly social e-com digital, and then highly like streamed digital. And of course today we're going to talk about the metaverse even more. So, I mean, it is important to think about what digitalization and what technology has meant to us. Now, in some broad strokes, it's meant some pretty big things. I think first and foremost, anywhere you go in any country, I think you hear the same things, which is like this generation is so much. I don't know if the word is smarter or wiser. I don't think so. Actually, the word is just so much more aware at a much earlier age. I mean, the real world gets so real for this generation. So earlier. This generation grows up so much faster, and that is just because the crazy exposure that we get, right? We can see anything we want and almost anything, the moment we can get past the parental, controls on our iPads or whatever, we can see anything. And so, and the crazy thing is that it's not a one-way street where it used to be with broadcast. Now it's more than two ways. It's multi-dimensional ways and multi-directional ways. And so it's not just content, it's conversations, it's worlds, it's opinions, and it's people. And this is what the young person is going into at such an early age. They're growing up so fast. Even the whole idea of education has changed. Whereas before it was about, hey, you got to memorize that, you got to learn that. Now the emphasis on education is just learn how to Google, right? Because you don't need to know anything. You don't have to remember anything. You just have to remember how to search something, and it's there at your fingertips. So we're just at a radically different place with this generation where they've grown up so much faster. They're so much more realistic and so much more of a realist, which then flips on the other side, right? Which is really interesting because you think about, wow, this is such a big, wide world. Digital's so big, you can go anywhere you want. And yet what we see is with so much space, the large majority of people get even more isolated, right? They get much more funneled into their own tiny little cocoon because even though it is a wide space, most people do not know how to traverse that wide space. And most people actually get into a little funnel. Whether that's, you can blame it on algorithms, but you can a lot blame it on human behavior and human preferences about their comfort zones. And as much as, we think, we break our comfort zones because we go digital. No. Digital just makes us more aware of what our comfort zones are and what we don't want to do. And so what we find is more and more people into their own comfort zones. And what that means is that when I say they're more and more isolated, is because their own comfort zones are extremely individual, right? It's just about my personal preferences and the places I want to go, which means that I have less and less chance to connect with you. And I don't want to connect with you. I just want to do what I want to do. And what that means then is that this generation is much more realistic, but then also much more independent, isolated, and lonely. And it is harder for them to connect even with people their same age, even with people sitting in the same classroom as them, in the real world, physical world, because the majority of their time is spent in their own teeny tiny personal worlds. And I'll pause it there. I'm sure there's lots of interesting questions, but broad strokes, right? Broad strokes, realists and really in their own world.
I love that, the digital revolution. And I think I find it so interesting what you've just said, that people can create their own worlds which are really independent. And in saying that, so talk to us a bit about the metaverse, right? Help us understand, especially myself, but also for people that are listening in, maybe they're so unfamiliar about the metaverse, because for my understanding, it's this alternative reality, this augmented reality, which is incredible. But as a novice, for me, as somebody that really loves feeling connected to everything, I think it's also one of those things that I think about and I'm like, is it just going to perpetuate one of the biggest, I would say, pandemics in the world, which is escapism, because ultimately, you can now create your own reality somewhere else. You don't have to be present right here. It's like you're literally creating a new world, a new reality. And yeah, I just wanted to know a little bit more myself, but also for everybody else who's listening in thinking, is this going to be the new normal?
Yeah, great question. The images and what we've seen so far of what metaverse is, most of them promotional videos coming out from Meta, is not what the metaverse is going to be eventually. It's like looking in the 1970s, looking at like Atari 1 and saying this is the video games. And it's just like, okay, yeah, that was video games from what they could offer you then. But you fast forward even just 5-10 years, from Atari, and you got a whole different definition of what video games was. Look, metaverse is going to be the same thing. Like what we see today about what metaverse is not what it's going to be even 5-10 years from now or 15 years from now. So I want to preamble that. But to try to define what metaverse is, or at least understand what the intention is from people like Zuckerberg and Meta, what is their intention, or how do they understand the metaverse? The metaverse is not just virtual reality. The metaverse is not just augmented reality. Those are tools. Those are, tools that are being used. What is the intention of all? The actual intention, if you're looking at all the technology that's being invested into, yes, it's getting you into those digital spaces, but the investment is about how do I make these digital spaces as real as possible. So that's why we have the VR that's really making it so that it shifts focus as your head turns, as your like eyeballs move around. But then also, they're spending a lot of time and energy thinking about the pressurized, sensitive, gloves and suits, so that when somebody touches you digitally, you feel it, right? If you pick up a ball or you pick up a cup digitally, you feel it. The intention of it, and so they're spending so much time around the spatial dimension, because it's about how do I feel the presence of somebody in the room who's not in the room. So it's their intention is trying to make it as real as possible, trying to hit on all the senses, and really work you into opening up into a different space. So that's the intention. Right. And, right now it's like weird, bubble heads and stuff like that. Right. But look, we know where the technology is going. The technology is, yes, it's going to get all the way to as realistic as, video quality. I mean, even today with our movies, we have deep fakes, right? Where literally you can de-age somebody and it's getting really, really good. If you look at the last Star Wars, so it's getting more and more real. So it's not going to be like, oh, I'm just going to turn myself into like a bobblehead and that's what it's going to be. It's going to be like, oh, it's going to get really real and it's going to feel really real. And so that's kind of where the intention is. That's where it's headed. The flip side of that, of course, is it is going to get really real. And then it's also going to get extremely fantastical, which is, of course, what we continue to see today, right? All the amazing stories and all the amazing images is that, yeah, it is digital, which means anything goes. But then what happens when you start to mix the fantastical with the feeling of it being extremely real? And that's the two sides of the same coin.
I mean, I don't want this podcast to be like a 24-hour podcast, but I feel like literally I could just ask you so many questions right now. I think for me, I spend a lot of time on Zoom, chatting to different people around the world, and it's always awkward. We're always interrupting each other. So if there's a way to have like a Zoom experience and it's personal, feels like you're in the room, I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
At the same time, I'm hearing stories of teenagers being in rooms and being exposed to like some really explicit sexual stuff, which is like crazy scary. So there's obviously a lot of positives and there's also some negatives. Like the internet, when that came about, a lot of positives we can use it for, but also there's a lot of negatives. What are you seeing as some of the positives that we could use it for to help young people and as the church maybe, and some of the negatives we've got to be aware of?
You want me to start with the positives or negatives?
Let's start with a high. Let's go with the positives.
All right, let's start with the positives. Okay, so obviously, all of us coming out of the pandemic, I think it's quite obvious that Zoom is not enough. As much as we're like, yay, Zoom for church and Zoom for meetings, like, anyone that has kids will, can attest, no, Zoom's not enough, man. Like we need a little bit more than that. So, the good point is, and especially when we look at the church today, we are in serious, the fight is around connection, obviously. The fight is around relationship. And a good metaverse, an effective metaverse, really does provide very interesting opportunities for us to get personal in a way that we just can't do with Zoom. The only way we can get that personal right now is in a small group setting, right? Or in a even more intimate than a small group setting. And so if the metaverse can allow us to expand on that and explore that, and then, thinking then about unreached peoples, or thinking then about, how, like, oftentimes I'm in meetings, ministry meetings and stuff like that, and we talk about the intense concentration of ministers, or people that have gone to seminary and trained people in North America versus the rest of the world that needs those ministers, and there's this crazy, concentration, whereas we need to start to spread it out, where we need to even those ratios. And so like things like the metaverse can help us with access to relationships, right? Access to, like seeing somebody eye to eye and human to human, access to intimacy, right? And I'm saying that's the possibility. That's the deep possibility with, greater tactileness, with greater, five senses. You can have the possibility to reach somebody on the other side of the world in a different time zone, and it can get more real. It's possible. Yeah. Now, the negatives.
Be as blunt as you can, just because I think for us, it's really important that we're setting our young people up to win as well as we can. And that's why I feel like we should be really understanding the metaverse so that we could go ahead of the young people and learn and then help prepare for them.
So the negatives are very serious when we start to look at social media. So we're not even at the metaverse yet, but just in massive online communities or worlds, games, online games, even just forums, the writing is already on the wall. You can see what the natural behavior of this generation is, which is they are utilizing things like multiple identities. They're using multiple avatars. They're using multiple accounts. And if they have the choice, they're using anonymous, identities to live, right? Again, when we're talking about digital natives now, so this is not like a new experience. This is their most natural experience. This is the one they feel is the most real. The experience they feel is the most real is the one where their identity is partitioned off, and it's not forced upon them. They've chosen it. That is how they know to live. They know to live to think, oh, I'm going to explore this part of myself here with this group of people. I'm going to cut off, and I'm going to explore another part of myself with this group of people. And these worlds never collide, and they don't know each other, right? And and I see that with a lot of for example, in the gaming world, I talk to some of the heads of some of the gaming companies, and they talk about how one of the most popular aspects of gaming is that people will go in there and build multiple personalities, sometimes to play the personalities, but a lot of times just to explore their own scenarios. So for example, like they will explore their gender, by building different gender-based identities to explore what their gender is in these worlds. Or they'll explore things like different relationship roles, or they'll explore, just different aspects of themselves. And it's just the norm. And And even worse than that, when we get to like the online forums, especially social media today, you can walk around being anonymous. And so when you're walking around being anonymous, you can say anything you want and there's no recourse. There's no outcome. You can say whatever you want. You can run up to somebody, you can slap them in the face, verbally and run away. And, there's no recourse. And, this rise of anonymous being normal, what this means is basically a generation losing the understanding of accountability in relationship. You see, when we get into relationship with somebody, when somebody knows us, knows our name, knows where we're from, we learn to think about the other person and connect in a way that both can benefit. But when we walk around with being anonymous and say, oh, there's no harm here, or, I have no risk here, then I can do anything. My behaviors, my actions, my thoughts, my words completely go off the wall and can go extreme. And we're seeing that already today in this generation, whether that's Twitter, whether that's, on the online games. Now think about that and extend that into the metaverse, where we're going to continue to have multiple avatars. You won't know if you're really speaking to a guy, a girl, old, young, who knows? Because as much as we say, oh, we can be real, we can also be fantastically unreal, right? And that's what we're going to get when we get into the metaverse. Like Satan, again, is just going to use this. It can be an opportunity to be great. It can be an opportunity to be a blessing, but it can absolutely be the same opportunity to be an extreme curse, where it will capture people and it will oppress them and it will bring them into a slavery. And it's a slavery of, never knowing how to be accountable, never knowing how to be actually an integrated self, always being fragmented in your identity. I might be able to connect a small piece of myself with somebody, but I'm so complex today and I'm so fragmented and everyone else is so complex and fragmented that there's no way we could ever try to get to know each other and actually like each other for the totality of who we are. So why bother? Why even try? And so we're gonna get further into that as we get into the metaverse.
Wow. And just on that, Kevin, I guess if for youth leaders, youth directors, anybody who cares about youth will be listening in on this. And I'm just guessing, do you have any advice for people that really want to be influential in this digital space and are looking at the metaverse and all of that and thinking about the future and leading young people well?
Yeah, great question. Tough question. And that one can only be worked out when we're doing it together, like on it together. But I'll say a couple things now. The first thing that definitely has come to mind in thinking about the question is about, how do you stay real? There's so much possibilities of what we can do. There's a lot of tools. There's a lot of widgets. There's a lot of gimmicky stuff. And it's readily accessible to us now. But where is Christ in it? And I'm not talking about metaphorically Christ. I'm talking about okay, look, we as ministers, it is about the Holy Spirit. And so if the Holy Spirit isn't there, we should not be doing it. Even if it creates a great effect, even if it creates a great, experience, too often we substitute Holy Spirit for experience. And now we're getting more and more tools of experience, but are we substituting the Holy Spirit? And we need to be courageous, and we're looking at everyone else like, wow, he's come out with that crazy, experience, and he's come out with that crazy thing. And it's just look, it's not a race and it's not a competition. And that's my other point too, Rich, is once we get into the metaverse, man, everything is going to have a metric. Everything is going to have a measurement, and everyone's going to be competing based on all these measurements. And we as ministers for Christ, look, we need to get away from all those things. We have to be careful of those things. Those are devices of the world, but we're in the world, but we're not of the world, right? And so what happens if you show up into your metaverse, whatever room, and two people show up and, the room beside you is bumping with 10,000 people, right? Are you going to feel like a loser? Or are you being like, no, actually God called me here maybe just for these two people? Like, we can't have our expectations shifted by worldly things. I mean, it's the same thing with preachers when the radio first was invented or when the television was first invented. Same things. We have to learn from history to help us understand, look, there are metrics that the world cares about, but then we need to stay true to what God cares about and what Jesus cares. Jesus went to a well and ministered to one person. Can you be in the metaverse and not expect 100 million people, but maybe you have to minister to one person at a well? And maybe it's just about, real touch, and I think that's, if there's one thing that we want to do there, it's about how can we use this for people to truly experience God. I mean, right now we can't do it. Right now we just pray with somebody over Zoom and it's good and God shows up there. But then I think about could I lay my hand on somebody who's halfway across the world, and truly lay my hand on them and let them feel that? And could the Holy Spirit show up through the metaverse, in that way? I mean, that's going to be so cool. I believe God can, is the God of all things and is God of all impossibilities. And I think he can. But we have to allow him to do that. We can't design it and orchestrate it for him. That's just not going to work, So in that way, it always has to come back to, are we true? Are we truly sold out for him? We should exist in the metaverse because the people are there. But when we meet these people, just like a person on the street, just like a person in the pews, anywhere else, are we truly meeting them?
Kevin Lee, thank you so much. I know you've got a 3-year-old daughter. I've got a 3-year-old son. So I'm all for arranged marriages. So if you want to do an arranged marriage in the metaverse in 20 years,
this is awesome.
Let's start planning.
I'll officiate.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time, Kevin. Your insight, the man you are, your humility, integrity, and your wisdom is second to none. So thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure, guys. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope for everyone that's listening, at least it's a thought starter to people to get excited about what's possible. Yeah, there's a lot of things to watch out about, but it just means we got to pray more. That's all. We just got to be more vigilant, and then we just got to follow Christ more. That's it. It's an exciting time, and we have to be excited with Christ.
Love that.
Awesome, no doubt.
Thanks so much, Kevin. We'll let you get off to bed. Thank you for staying up so late for us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Looking forward to hearing everything. Bye, guys.
Oh, that was so good. Got so much time and respect for Kevin Lee. Azende, what would you say your takeaway was?
Yeah, I loved when Kevin Lee just said at the end, you know what? At the end of the day, this is where the world is going. The metaverse is going to be a very real thing for us and our young people. So let's embrace it because God will be there too. And I just felt that was really encouraging about anybody who's got any fears of what this could look like. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. But you know what, guys? That's it from us, Dan.
That's it.
And if you have loved this podcast, I really hope that you have and you found it helpful. Please do subscribe on all of the platforms, which are Spotify and also Apple. But also, please share it. Share it with people that you think will be useful for. Other than that, we can't wait to get you guys back in some more conversations. Don't forget to keep sending all of those voice messages and DMs. We read all of them and we consider all of them and we make them episodes. But yeah, that's it from us, guys. Bye.